Tashi Delek and welcome to Tibet This Week, a weekly feature in English that tells you about this week's news on Tibet, His Holiness Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. We are not China's colonies, says Botswana President over a controversial Dalai Lama's visit and promises to re-invite His Holiness. CTA President to leave for United States. Arunachal Pradesh adopts the Tibetan Rehabilitation Policy Act. Confirmation of suicide note left by Larungar nun castigates religious repression opted by Chinese government. News from Overseas Office of Tibet. U.S. State Department highlights Chinese interference in Tibetan religious practices in annual report. Taiwan Office of Tibet releases new book in Chinese. On Friday last week, the president of Botswana, Mr. Ian Khama, stood up to the Chinese government over the Dalai Lama's planned visit to his country and said he is not intimidated by China. President Khama asserted that they are not China's colony after an exchange of veiled, indirect attacks and counterattacks between the two countries unfolded as China accused Botswana of violating a policy in which China views His Holiness the Dalai Lama's activities as secessionist. His Holiness the Dalai Lama was set to visit the capital Gaborone from August 17 to 19 as a part of what Botswana officials dubbed a purely private visit organized by the NGO Mind and Life Institute and the Boto University. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, however, cancelled the scheduled visit, citing exhaustion, temporarily thawing the relation between the two countries. President Khama on Monday this week promised to re-invite His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Botswana and wish him a speedy recovery. President Dr. Lobsang Sengye of Central Tibetan Administration is scheduled to leave Dharamshala for an official visit to the United States from 27th August to 11th September 2017. During the visit, President Dr. Lobsang Sengye will have public engagements and meeting with dignitaries in United States cities including Portland, New Mexico, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, Colorado, etc. President Dr. Sengye will be back in Dharamshala on 11th September. On Thursday last week, the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh has officially adopted the Tibetan Rehabilitation Policy Act of 2014 for Tibetans residing in the state. Sri Pema Khandu, Chief Minister of the state, wrote to Dr. Lobsang Sengye, the President of Central Tibetan Administration, which said, "I'm happy to inform that in the cabinet meeting convened by me on 12 August 2017, I, along with my colleagues, decided to adopt and extend the Tibetan Rehabilitation Policy 2014 in the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh houses the four major Tibetan settlements in India, namely Tezu, Myo, Tuting, and Tenzin. President Dr. Sengye thanked the state government of Arunachal Pradesh led by Sri Pema Khandu for confirming the implementation of the policy. Since the official announcement of the Tibetan Rehabilitation Policy Act by the Union Government of India in 2014, Munkot and recently Hunsur, two of the major Tibetan settlements, have officially signed land lease agreements ensuring the sustainability of the Tibetan settlements. The U.S. State Department released annual report on international religious freedom, which highlighted Chinese interference in the religious practices in monasteries and nunneries in Tibet. The report highlighted that the Chinese authorities have engaged in widespread interference in religious practices, especially in Tibetan Buddhist monasteries and nunneries in Tibet, and enforcing disappearance, physical abuse, prolonged detention due to religious practices. The report says authorities evicted more than 2,000 monks and nuns from Buddhist institute at Larungar and Yachangar, destroying the homes where they resided and subjecting many of them to the so-called patriotic re-education. The report consists of 4 sections, and the 4th section, which talked about U.S. government policy, which said US government officials, including the President, the Secretary of the State, the US Ambassador in Beijing, and the US Consul General in Chengdu, continued the sustained and concerted effort to encourage greater religious freedom in Tibetan areas. In July last year, 3 nuns from Lharungar committed suicide in protest against the Chinese government's demolition and forceful eviction of its residents from Lharungar, the world's largest Buddhist institute. Tsering Dorma, aged 20 and a native of Mewa Township in Kakok County, located in Sichuan province, hanged herself on 19 July at her quarter located in the Pema Khantu's nuns' residence, the nuns' district in Lharungar. Harsh Chinese censorship laws has prevented any further investigation into her case. In her suicide note, she said she hanged herself out of anguish and unhappiness emitting from the demolition carried out in Lharungar. In her suicide note, Tsering Dorma wrote, "My heart is so sad. The reason is because Chinese government does not allow us the freedom to practice our religion. Even the tiny shelters have been destroyed. It is better to die." Other known cases of suicide by nuns at Lharungar include Rinzin Dorma and Semka, who died by hanging on the same day as Tsering Dorma. Lharungar is said to be the biggest Tibetan Buddhist institute in the world. The population of Lharungar has been nearly halved since last year from its original population of approximately 10,000 by the Chinese government. On Tuesday this week, Geshe Jambel Chodzin, the religious teacher at the Taiwan office of Tibet, released a new Chinese book featuring His Holiness the Dalai Lama's talks to the college students in India and across the globe. So much for this week. See you next Friday. Have a great weekend.